Burn.
Testing.
You have something?
I don't have.
Do you need more?
Oh, there's.
Hold up.
Check one, check one.
How about the phone?
Police stand by. Operators are diligently trying to figure out what the problem is. And that is correct right there, so. Oh, we got them both going. Let's go.
Okay.
We're both hot on stage. Brian?
Testing one,
Both.
testing one. We're good?
All right, roll.
Hear ye, hear. Oh, wait a second, wrong one. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the monthly meeting of the Arkansas Society of Freethinkers. I'm Vern Bradley, and I'm one of the organizers of the Freethinkers. We are a nonprofit organization devoted to maintaining the separation between religion and government, advocating a scientific and humanistic viewpoint, and improving human society. Find out more about us on the web at arfreethinkers.org. Or, and the most reliable way is by coming to some of our events and getting to know our members. Our calendar is on meetup.com. Just search for Arkansas Society of Freethinkers. The Free Thought of the Day is a segment of our monthly program in which we look at a quote, an idea, or a concept that appeals to us as free thinkers. Today's Free Thought is brought to us by Chris Brecki.
Thank you, Byron. Usually this is just a quote, but I have to put this one in context or it won't make any sense. I found this interesting video on the Philosophy Tube YouTube channel, and it's about the most misunderstood philosopher in the world. That philosopher is Judith Butler. Butler writes that much of what we associate with gender is, in their words, performative. That is, cultural expectations require people with some bodily traits to behave in masculine or feminine ways, and as those things are defined in the current culture. Those who deviate will be punished. Think about the choices of clothing you can wear either as a masculine or feminine person. Think about makeup and jewelry choices, wallet or purse. Think about male-dominated jobs and female-dominated jobs. Think about the association of blue with boy and pink with girl. Think about the psychological studies that show that newborn infants are described differently and treated differently by adults based on whether they're told that the infant is male or female. Think about all the people who believe some kinds of automobiles or foods or other consumer products are more masculine or feminine than others. The masculine person who would never drive a small car or eat a tofu salad, or the feminine person who would never drive a truck or eat raw steak. Rare steak. Raw is even beyond masculinity, that's just animal. But how much of conforming to gender actually has anything to do with biology? These are all consumer products and cultural norms that we're talking about. How much of it is cultural baggage? You can guess at your own percentages. Butler's point is that gender is a thing we do rather than a thing we are. Butler wrote, "Gender is in no way a stable identity or locus of agency from which various acts proceed. Rather, it is an identity tenuously constituted in time, an identity instituted through a stylized repetition of acts. Further, gender is instituted through the stylization of the body, and hence must be understood as the mundane way in which bodily gestures, movements, and enhancements of various kinds constitute the illusion of an abiding gendered self." Butler goes further. Some gender theorists distinguish between the concepts of biological sex and gender. From Butler's point of view, it doesn't make sense to try to separate those concepts when they cannot be separated from their social meanings, and when we cannot even observe these concepts without the social meanings that we attach to them. Our cultures tell us the meaning of our anatomy from a very young age, And those meanings are conflated with right and wrong ways to behave. And so there may be thousands of other ways to be, but we aren't going to be able to know those things because people are punished for stepping outside the boundaries. Some thinkers now worry that our categorization of additional genders like genderqueer, femboy, gay man, lesbian, trans man, or trans woman might devolve into the same problem we had with the cisgender male and female gender roles. Maybe we're just creating more gender roles on top of the two that we had before. And if that was the case, then people would be forced to conform into those boxes as well. And people might be forced to conform to these new norms in order to fit in with the community or avoid social punishment. What if we miss the opportunity to dismantle the concept of gender in the first place so that nobody has to be forced into gender roles ever again, is the line of thinking that this leads to. 100 years ago, scientific minds thought about race in the same way we currently think about gender. It was considered to be a biological fact with implications about the ways people are supposed to behave, rightly or wrongly, their role in society, their intellectual or physical capabilities, and their submission or dominance in relation to others. Eventually, we figured out that the vast majority of these assumptions were cultural baggage and justification for the oppression of others. Race was always a social and political construct, not a biological law of categorization. So Judith Butler makes us ask ourselves whether our concept of gender is equally backward and oppressive. Back to you, Bert.
Thank you, Chris. Skeptical Sidebar is a part of our meeting where we discuss pseudoscience or alternative facts, fake news, conspiracy theories, and I had trouble finding something I wanted to talk about today. Usually this is really easy. Some book I'm reading, and I usually am reading 2 or 3, has something in it I can apply to this. I finally settled on this. How many of you are aware that Lee Harvey Oswald was actually tried for the murder of John F. Kennedy? There was a television program in England that hired a production company that hired a prosecutor named Vincent Bugliosi. If you don't know Vince wrote the book Helter Skelter. He wrote a number of books, and they hired him to be the prosecutor. They hired a retired judge from Texas. They brought in people from the Dallas area to be the jury. So they had real evidence, real exhibits, real photographs. They showed the Zapruder tape. They had everything they could possibly do, everything that they would have had here to have a trial. The defense attorney was Jerry Spence, who's a well-known defense attorney. So you can't say they didn't have great lawyers going on. They had a genuine judge. They had a real... the jury they picked was mostly white and mostly women, mostly white and mostly men, as a jury in Dallas in 1964 would have been. But they brought these people in from Dallas. And this lasted for, I think, 4 nights on TV in the UK. And in the end, Oswald was convicted. One of the things that troubles me about this case has always been the people who say there were extra shooters there can't explain the bullets. 3 bullets were fired, 2 of them were recovered. Both of those 2 bullets came from the same rifle, and the same rifle is one that was shipped to a P.O. box that was owned by Lee Harvey Oswald. All of this going on, but we here have such a desire to believe something else had to have happened. When the show was bought to be broadcast here, they cut it down from several light evenings to 2.5 hours. They did the whole thing. They sent the jury out to come up with a verdict, and verdict may come the next day, it may be several days, but as after the jury exits, they take the prisoner out, and as Lee Harvey Oswald, the actor portraying Lee Harvey Oswald, is exiting the courtroom, he's shot. That's what happened here. In England, he was convicted. They had an ending to it. I think there's just a lot of people here that don't want that to end. They just, you know, if you have, I got into an argument with a guy from this group, and he was on and on and on, and he can't be, and I said, I won't discuss this with you until you read Reclaiming History of Vincent Bugliosi. It's a book that's yay thick, and every time I get into an argument with someone that says, well, just this, I don't believe it, I say, go read this and then come back and tell me, and they never do. Well, this guy did. He went and read it, but afterwards he didn't want to argue about it anymore. It's troubling that when we see the truth in front of us, sometimes we just don't like it. If you have enjoyed what you heard here today, or more importantly, if you haven't, volunteer for a role. Every month we ask someone to come up and tell a member story, to do a thought of the day, and a skeptical sidebar. And you can, anybody that's involved with the Free Thinkers, talk to them and they will get you hooked up. And you can come and speak. The Arkansas Society of Free Thinkers, the Arkansas Society of Free Thinkers is a diverse organization with members who represent a wide range of opinions. We invite speakers who we think will be interesting and make us think. That's what we have today. Dr. Janet Cathy is a lifelong Arkansan and a proud product of Arkansas public education. She graduated from medical school and completed residency in obstetrics and gynecology. One day I'll learn to read. Dr. Cathy enjoyed a successful private practice in Little Rock for 23 years. During her time in private practice, she began caring for transgender patients. Dr. Cathy joined the faculty at UAMS in 2013, and in October 2014, she opened a clinic that provides a safe and respectful environment for all LGBT patients. Dr. Cathy is a strong advocate for women's reproductive rights and legislation, making several appearances before state legislative health committees as an expert witness in reproductive health litigation. Her topic today is challenges of delivering care to transgender patients in a rural red state. Please welcome Dr. Cathy.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, you would think that I would get up here and talk about health care and delivering health care for transgender patients in Arkansas, and I am. But you might be surprised that a very important part of delivering health care has to do with legal issues. And when I started thinking about legal issues, we can't help but visit the Arkansas legislature. And one of the biggest barriers for transgender folks in Arkansas is just the fact that they are in Arkansas. You know, another title I could have used was from national embarrassment to international shame, you know, transgender care in Arkansas. Because it has been that we have become international news over some of the policies our state has adopted. You know, when I founded the Transgender Clinic in 2014, I had no special training and maybe just a little bit of interest, but I was willing to do this. And I thought that this care for me, my part of it, would be simply prescribing hormones. But very quickly found out that it was not just about being a medical provider, it was being a mental health provider, a family therapist, being a legal clerk, and doing paperwork as well. But just so, and we have been inundated with all these different laws. Oh, and also political activists, because about that time was whenever the legislature decided that this was a great issue for them to get involved in. 2016, which is really not that long ago, was when North Carolina passed its bathroom bill. And that's when trans people, in 2014, they were starting to come on their own. They were being recognized. They were forming support groups. And in 2016, they just became a target. And we know that this failed in North Carolina, and the reason it failed was because it cost them money. But that did not stop. We had the cookie cutter now. We had the cookie cutter bill, and it starts passing down to all these little red states. Also, another case that happened in 2018 was this Women in Sports. This case in Connecticut where where a high school runner, at the state level defeated these two girls, and a right-wing think tank got hold of this. And although all three of those kids ended up with scholarships, again, we've got our cookie cutter where we can go into these red states and have legislation about athletics. So today I just want to kind of catch you up what laws we do have, where they are, because it's kind of hard to keep up with all of this now. Every state has their own rules. Something gets passed, the courts reverse it, but they don't care that the court's going to reverse it because it's already out there in the Arkansas universe. People assume that it's passed and that it's law. It doesn't get quite as much airtime when it's reversed in the federal courts. One of the first laws was the Fairness in Women's Sports Act, and they always have creative names for these bills. The Fairness in Women's Sports. Who's not for fairness in women's sports? We are. But what the Fairness in Women's Sports actually says is that it's unlawful for biological males to compete in women's sports. This applies to all schools, public, private, clubs, teams, through college level education. I think that's a little bit of a far reach for the legislature to be determining. Forget that we've got the International Olympic Committee, the NCAA, the educational associations. They have their rules in place, and all these rules have worked. But unnecessarily, the Arkansas legislature decides to put their stamp on it. And no one's ever challenged it because it hadn't been an issue. It was just needless legislation that promoted hate and just meanness to a marginalized group of people. The very same legislation in that 4 years ago, we had the SAFE Act, Save Adolescents from Experimentation. And that was the bill that prevented minors from getting transgender care. Which, most people would say, well, I don't think kids ought to get surgery. No one would argue with that. And that's the idea they promote. We don't want kids getting permanent surgery. I've heard them up there. That's exactly how they sound. We don't want them having their genitalia operated on. I'm not exaggerating that. That's exactly. I thought, wow, you're kind of obsessed with kids' genitals, But that's neither here nor there. But what it didn't only prevent surgery, which no one operates on kids anyway, but it prevented not just hormone management and not just hormone blockers, but also all mental health care and referrals for mental health care. It also had attached to it civil and criminal penalties for people who might provide such care. So, and that did pass. It was immediately, the ACLU immediately took that to federal court and did win the case. And in fact, the judge ruled on it from the bench, which, as we know, a bench ruling is uncommon. They went for permanent, and that law was not put into effect. But that's not good enough for the Arkansas legislature. It's like, okay, we can't ban treating minors. So this past legislature, they passed, okay, you can treat minors, but pages and pages of this is how you have to treat them. You know, saying, okay, this is the mental health care they have to have. This is the surgical. This is the hormonal management they have to have. In other words, directing specific medical care. And if they can do that for one condition, they can do it for anything they want. Arkansas, through TransCare and through reproductive health care, have allowed the Arkansas legislature to insert themselves into the practice of medicine. And like I said, if they can do it for one thing, they can do it for any other thing they so desire. We also have, at the same time, which y'all are, I'm sure, well aware of, the Healthcare Conscience Bill. And that is in effect that you can deny providing medical care for someone if it is against your deeply held religious and moral beliefs. So that, you know, I'm, say, a very fundamental Christian doctor could refuse to give care to someone who might be an atheist or a free thinker or a Muslim. And as long as it's is against your deeply held religious and moral belief, then it is okay to do that in the state of Arkansas. So these are fronts that we've been fighting for the last few years. Now, most recently, we had our own little snuck in our new governor, soon after she was elected, snuck in her own little bathroom bill. And although it's not wide-reaching now, it is against a state. She signed an executive order that children in schools could not use, that they had to use the bathroom of their gender, sex, assigned at birth. And that if these rules, if a child was found to not be using what she considers the appropriate bathroom, the teachers, the principal could all have civil and criminal penalties for allowing a child to use the bathroom of a gender, the sex not assigned at birth. That is our current Arkansas law. And then just this past, within the past few weeks, she signed into law the DMV rules. Arkansas, you know, having ID we take it for granted. It is extraordinarily important to have ID that matches who you are, because it's a safety issue. And that's how, as a physician provider, I got involved in these legal issues. My job as a physician is to keep my patients safe. I might do that with a vaccine, I might do it with prenatal care, and I might do it with making sure that they have the appropriate identification that matches who they look like, who they are. Let's say, for instance, people can get their name changed. Now, we take for granted when I got married, all I did, I went down to the clerk's office, showed my marriage license, it was changed, it didn't cost me anything, didn't have to file paperwork, it was done. Trans patients have paperwork they have to go through. It's a $175 filing fee, which if you're making $1,200 a month, that's a lot of money. It's a huge obstacle. But let's say they do get their name changed, which, like I said, Arkansas judges have been pretty liberal with that. We've learned that the courts aren't always going to hold the line, but they get their name changed, go down to the DMV and say, I need my driver's license changed. Arkansas, up until a few weeks ago, you'd say, oh, and while you're changing my name, how about putting my gender male? Arkansas had an A+ rating from the HRC and ACLU on allowing gender to be changed. All you had to do was state the gender you wanted on your driver's license. That's been changed now. You can only change your driver's license if you have a legal change in gender. Now, where that becomes one, it becomes a safety issue in that we show our ID to a lot of people. We never even think about it, you know. But what if you're 20-something and you've shown it in a bar? For me, you know, for my daughter, she knows all they're going to look at is the year she was born. But if they look at it and see, wait a minute, something doesn't look right here. And then they go over to someone and say, hey, y'all, that chick over there, she's really a dude. Oh, you're kidding me. You know, I've had this happen to a patient who showed his ID at a Magic Mart, I won't say Magic Mart, but at some kind of 7-Eleven or whatever in Searcy, and that happened, and he ended up beaten up and hospitalized. So it is a real issue. So that this is a kind of thing that can happen now, that we will not allow people to change their gender without having a legal change in gender. On the bright side, in 2020, when Joe Biden took office, Social Security was changed. They no longer had to have a physician affidavit or legal change in gender for Social Security. All you have to do is fill out a form and say, oh, I want my gender to reflect, and it'll be changed without question. That's important because workplaces, human resources, they're going to pull up your Social Security. You want that to match so you're not outed at work. It's a safety issue. And then what's really great is the Biden administration extended that to passport services. Now when you apply for your passport or want to change your passport, you can just identify the gender you want reflected. A passport is as good as a birth certificate. I tell all my patients, get a passport, even if you're not going anywhere. $110, it's good for 10 years, and anytime someone wants a birth certificate or an ID, you show them that passport. But we shouldn't have to have workarounds, you know, work around state government. We should feel safe in our state. And as a result of this, we have people leaving our state. People are less likely to practice in, people want to live in the state, and physicians don't want to come to a state where the legislature practice medicine. So there's a lot of reasons why we have to keep an eye on those people. It's very hard to fight these supermajorities, but the way we do it is the way these people right out front here are doing it. And we have to do it, and we have to stick with it. The other thing we can do is to offer, time and talents to the ACLU, or to offer to help somebody do their paperwork. Some neighbor, some young person, you don't know. Because these forms for name change, they're not very complicated, but they can be overwhelming to people that have have a lot of anxiety, that people that are not necessarily very sophisticated. So there are a lot of ways we can offer help. So I guess what I'm saying is, all of this we know is just directed at being mean. It's easy to pick on people that only represent about 0.05% of the population. And what government should be about, what we should be about, is protecting those people and not making them using them for political expediency. So, do y'all have any questions about legal or medical issues about transgender care, any aspect?
Yeah, does Arkansas law in any way recognize intersexuality, where people are just as a plain matter of biological fact, either male or female?
Well, on the birth certificates, I really don't know how they do intersex. Now, they've got to be assigned. I know when I practiced obstetrics, it was like, you've got to decide, is this a male or female, and it's got to be on the birth certificate. And if the doctor doesn't, then the parents got to decide. And once it's put on that birth certificate, it literally takes a court order to get anything on that changed.
I'm wondering what is the legal process of changing your gender?
Changing your gender, and that changing your gender, changing your birth is essentially changing your birth certificate. One, it has to be done in the state you were born. Now, every state has different rules in it. Some states, California, Oregon, New York, East Coast, West Coast, all you have to do is get a state form that you sign and say, I promise, I'm not doing this for reasons of fraud. I need my birth certificate changed to male. And they'll do it. Some states require that you have full gender reassignment surgery. And they won't even accept a physician affidavit. They want the operative report. Think North Carolina. Some states, Indiana, imagine this, you can't have your birth certificate changed at all. They will do an amended birth certificate, but that's not going to out you, Arkansas, it's very interesting, is because Arkansas just says you have to have had surgery. Well, I have no doubt when they made this law 40 or 50 years ago, they meant gender reassignment surgery, but that's not what it says. It says surgery. So my interpretation as a provider is that if a patient has any type of gender-related surgery, top surgery, breast implants, hysterectomy, anything they've had related to gender, I'll sign off. And the courts in Arkansas, these judges don't want to get into the details of it. They usually look at that physician affidavit and say, okay, it's done. And usually by the time someone presents at that point, they're going to look like the gender. And again, we get into that. It's about how you look, not about what you say you are or what you feel. It's about if someone thinks, yeah, you look like you're a girl, I'll let you change your birth certificate to female.
I do have a friend's brother, and he had mastectomy.
Yeah.
I think you love to read also.
I know.
But anyway, it was for breast cancer. But I wonder if that was his surgery that he used.
If I were their physician, yes, I would sign it off. But, you know, it's getting providers informed of that, because providers are going to say, you know, if you don't do it a lot and you're not looking for places to make it work, you're going to go, oh, well, you hadn't had surgery, you know. So, you know, it takes creative people sometimes.
Any other questions?
Did you take any questions about abortion?
Yeah, ask me.
Did I?
That's my best topic.
Oh,
Yeah.
my sister-in-law is an OB-GYN in Alabama,
Uh,
which is, yeah, I know. So, you know, of course, she always practiced to the level of care,
mhm.
you know, that she was supposed to, but since their laws have changed, and I just wondered if this is going on in Arkansas. I don't know. She says that they have to let women become septic before they can have an abortion.
Well, and
I think
it has to be, you know, and out each state, again, we've got 50 separate state little laws going on here. You know, Arkansas, you know, it has to be, some states say health of the mother.
Yes.
Some say life of the mother. So, you know, you got to look at those little nuances. You know, if it says life, we do get in this issue. Okay, how life-threatening? How
Yes.
close to death? You know, and we do, as pro-choice people, it's like, you know, there's not exceptions for rape and incest. There's not exceptions, but, you know, we should emphasize there is one reason for abortion, and that's because a woman wants one. And that's, you know, where we should be. The Arkansas Abortion Amendment, you know, my organization, Planned Parenthood, has not really come out in support of that amendment, because Planned Parenthood is so against having any limitations whatsoever. But I would say, you know, the Arkansas Abortion Act is not about this is the limit. We should look at it as this is the bare minimum that we're going to accept. And we should look at it that way.
Dr. Kathy, would you talk a little bit about the, in general, the experiences that transgender people have encountered, and at what age have they noticed this?
You know, one of the things I learned about taking care of trans people is, well, like I said, when I started, it was not because I had any special training or interest, but it became interesting very quickly because the stories are very compelling, very interesting. And patients, I'd always ask them, so what are your earliest memories identifying female? And they all had very, very early, consistently very early memories of identifying as that gender before you really even kids, before they've been to elementary school, before they've thought about gender. And as I did this, I just became more and more obvious that this is something innate, that it is not something that people chose, and it is not something, it is a lifelong persistence of these feelings. And then there's a second spike, it'd be like, I knew when I was 5, and then the next one, I knew when I hit puberty, you know, when these other hormones were kicking in. And then usually I'd see patients for their first visit, they would be 18 to 22, and it'd be like, why now? And it would be, Well, I was raised up in a real Christian family, or I was raised in a real conservative family, and it wouldn't have been a choice for me, you know. So it tells me, what are we telling our kids? What are we telling them kids?
Do you know of any good research on correlating people's sense of gender identity with genetics or brain structure, or anything that you could, say, make a prediction from an early age about what it might be?
There is limited research, but there is a very interesting study, and this was a Dutch study, where they did functional MRIs, you know, where they'd MRI the brain, and certain areas of the brain light up, and that male and female brains look different on functional MRI. And if you take a trans woman, her functional MRI is going to look a lot more like my brain than it would, say, Chris's brain. So those, and it's a real limited study, but those are just very expensive studies to carry out, you know. But I'd like to see more of those kind of studies. We need them.
Any other questions?
I think we've noticed that there's more transgender male, female as opposed to female to male. Can you enlighten us a little bit on that?
You know, it is one thing that I noticed very early on, and maybe I make my own assumptions, but patients who transitioned later in life, say after 40, were much more likely to be trans females. And it's not that I didn't see, and when I did see a trans male who transitioned later, well, let me answer this better. I think that it is fewer trans males transition late in life, because it's not hard to live in society as a masculine woman. You know, nobody's going to stare at you at the grocery store or question you at the grocery store. You know, it's just like, oh, she's just a masculine lesbian. Nobody's going to think about it. But let a man walk around in a dress, and you want to talk about social constraints and what is wrong and what is not normal or what's not going to get attention, it's just not acceptable for men to be effeminate. And that kind of gets into our opening.
Any other questions?
All right. Thank you all very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Kathy. Next month, our speaker is going to be John Eichler. And I think most of us have kind of assumed for the last 20, 30 years that plate tectonics is a settled science, that's here, but he doesn't think so. He's going to talk on expansion tectonics. And he's got a book coming out about it. He may have copies of his book here with him when he comes in. He talked to me a little bit about it, and it's more extensive than I could possibly tell you. So we're going to wait and let him talk about that. The Arkansas Society of Free Thinkers. We hope you've enjoyed this meeting. Next month, John Eichler's coming. The Arkansas Society of Free Thinkers needs volunteers. We need people to help with graphic design and website development, to write letters to stop church-state violations, and to host events like potlucks, a book club, family and child-centered activities. If you have the skills or ideas to contribute to our cause, contact us at info at arfreethinkers.org. Get involved and come to some of our other events. Monday, tomorrow, is Pint Night. Pint Night is normally held at the Flying Saucer. Tomorrow only, unless we make some other change, it will be held next door to the Flying Saucer at a New Mexican place. It's where the library was, the bar that was called the library. It's La Chingada. And so that's where we're going to have Pint Night tomorrow night. That's at 7. And second Tuesday's come and gone. First Tuesday's come and gone. Second Sunday's come and gone. So head to Meetup to find anything else you'd like to do. Oh, we need volunteers for running a table. Simply the Secular Students Alliance. Is that SAS?
Yes, Secular Student Alliance is having their national convention here in Little Rock on June 14th, 15th, and 16th. And ASF will be there running a table, helping to get the local youth aware of us and organizing. And we need people who can cover that table and make a good impression, tell people what we're about. We can get you into the conference, which is a big value right there if you're willing to sign up and help staff that table.
There we go.
What are the hours?
That's a detail I don't have right in my mind at the moment, but it's pretty much regular daytime hours.
What days did you say?
June 14th, 15th, and 16th.
One of their speakers is going to be Seth Andrews. Seth has spoken to our group a couple of times, and he's good. He has a podcast called The Thinking Atheist, and he has a podcast called True Stories, which is loosely based on what Paul Harvey used to do, the rest of the story. So True Stories is worth doing. I think it's 3 times a week, and it's about a 5-6 minute listen. Before you leave, introduce yourself to some new people, have a cookie, and make plans to come back. We thank you for coming. We hope to see you here next month. Next month is the 23rd.
Right, it's a week later than usual.
It's a week later than usual because of the Secular Student Alliance having their thing. We bumped ours a week. So thank you very much, and good afternoon.